Systematic work to detect and eliminate enemy occupiers continues along the entire front line, from north to south. In this footage, you can see destroyed enemy logistics equipment and the destruction of an ATV with a Russian soldier on the temporarily occupied territory of Donbass. This is the work of the fighters from the Signum Unmanned Systems Battalion of the 59th Motorized Infantry Brigade. In the video, the Russians are trying to cover their routes with anti-drone nets, but our warriors find the enemy targets and destroy them. Meanwhile, the invaders are also suffering losses in the Pokrovsk direction. Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance, with the help of HIMARS and Caesar, struck Russian artillery. 4 enemy guns and 2 ammunition depots were destroyed, the Air Assault Forces Command of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported. It is precisely in this sector of the front that Russian artillery is shelling Ukrainian positions and striking civilian infrastructure. And this is the Lyman direction. Work on the occupiers by the Pomstana and Revenge Brigade and their heavy attack drone Vampire. The video shows the result of the devastating work of the operators from the Shkit shield unit. The occupiers were trying to entrench themselves in a sturdy, abandoned building, our defenders note. The Ukrainian Vampire destroyed the enemy's shelter along with their personnel. At the same time, there is good news from the Dnipropetrovsk region. Recently, as a result of offensive actions, fighters of the 425th Separate Assault Battalion Skala, Rock, liberated 6 settlements in the region and returned Terenove, Zaporizhzhye, Novogeorgivka, Voronove, Sichenve and Malivka to Ukrainian control. During the offensive, critical losses were inflicted on the Russian 120th Marine Division and units of the 68th Army Corps, the Skala Regiment reported.
We crossed the river on rafts, set up a position, and started working detecting the enemy.
The enemy mostly advances during the day. At night, from what I observed, they mostly follow the same route. They also entered Malivka.
They were in the trenches, they were in the houses, but our guys, being stronger, kept pushing them out, pushing them out. We are going further to push them out and move forward in this way.
This is very hard work, because to raise this flag, you have to come face to face with the enemy and their drones more than once. Well, it's a huge amount of work. It's very important.
The fighters say that assault operations were conducted with constant air support, thanks to which they managed not only to cut off an important logistics route of the occupiers, but also to force enemy units to retreat. Meanwhile, in the Sumy region, our defenders are striking at the mobility of the Russians in the North Slobozansky direction. Fighters of the Prime Unit of the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine destroyed 12 units of enemy equipment. Among the spoils are a cannon, 8 vehicles, and 3 of the occupiers' quad bikes. The loss of such equipment significantly complicates the Russians' movement, supply of ammunition, and rotation of personnel. In total, in the Sumy region since the beginning of August, our defenders from the 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade Magura have destroyed 75 enemy aerial targets. Most of the downed targets are Russian Molnia 2 strike UAVs, which the occupiers use for reconnaissance and strikes on Ukrainian positions. They are also hunting the enemy in the Kharkiv direction. Near Kamyanka, soldiers of the Hatilo Unmanned Systems Battalion used FPV drones to disable a rare target, an enemy Impulse M robotic tracked platform. As noted by the soldiers of the 3rd Separate Heavy Mechanized Iron Brigade, this enemy robotic ground platform was used as a base for transport and mine-laying vehicles, as well as air defense assets and other systems.
The 79th Brigade is currently carrying out its combat missions in the Oleksandrivka direction of the front. We all recently saw some quite good news from the Air Assault Forces Command about some Ukrainian territories being liberated from the invaders. The 79th Brigade also, let's say, contributed to the execution of these tasks. They also conducted assault operations, deoccupying Ukrainian lands from the invaders, specifically in the Oleksandrivka direction of the front. And we have some, well, quite decent successes there in liberating territory on our land.
I will clarify that the General Staff reported that 745 square kilometers of territory have been liberated, along with 26 villages at the intersection of the Donetsk, Dnipropetrovsk, and Zaporizhzhia regions. But that is over the last 6 months, I emphasize. And also, Mr. Roman, information has appeared in the media that the armed forces of Ukraine have completely driven the Russians out of the Dnipropetrovsk region. Although I haven't seen confirmation of this from the General Staff itself, but those Russian Z bloggers, they say that yes, it seems they were indeed driven out of the Dnipropetrovsk region. Tell us what is currently known, what is happening there in the Dnipropetrovsk region, or
Yes, I also saw the news specifically about the fact that the Dnipropetrovsk region was completely deoccupied, that is, the enemy was driven out. But there is also no confirmation from the General Staff. As the head of the communications department of the 79th Brigade, I can only comment on my own sector and cannot say with 100% certainty that this is indeed the case. We need to wait for the response from the General Staff because a fairly large number of military units are involved in this sector and each unit is responsible for its own area. In other words, only the General Staff can comment on such information.
I also wanted to mention the video. Rare footage was published on your brigade's pages showing how your brigade destroyed an entire battalion of Russians at once during the fighting in the Alexandrivka sector. Please tell us more about this. How did it happen? How was this achieved?
Yes, indeed, we did release such news on our pages, but the destruction of the battalion did not happen all at once, not in a single day. This was over a period of time while carrying out combat missions specifically in the Alexandrivka direction from the moment we entered this sector until the moment we published it. It was quite hard work for our guys because, first and foremost, there was a saturation of our line of combat engagement with drones. That is, a very large number of unmanned aerial vehicles were brought in. These include both fiber optic UAVs and analog UAVs. Also, artillery and artillery assets took on a very large amount of work. They are destroying the enemy very, let's say, brilliantly. And so this is a complex of measures that was aimed specifically at breaking through the front line and destroying the enemy's front line and advancing our troops deep into our land, liberating our land.
And given that the Russians have been pushed back in this direction, are they currently making attempts to regain their lost positions? And if they are, what do these attempts of theirs look like?
Yes, indeed, the Russians are trying to conduct counteroffensive actions. Counteroffensive actions consist, for the most part, of small assault groups. So specifically, any large mechanized columns or a large amount of armored vehicles, they use, if we take tanks, for example, they are used more for firing from closed firing positions. That is, they perform more of an artillery role. BMPs or some kind of infantry fighting vehicles are used as taxis. Somewhere in the rear, they try to bring their servicemen as close as possible to the line of combat contact, but also as close as possible. That's 10, 15, sometimes 20 kilometers, because a 20-kilometer kill zone is already provided by our brigade, which destroys the enemy at a distance of 20 kilometers from our very front line. And the main tactic for the Russians remains conducting assault operations with small assault groups.
After they were unable to develop an offensive and essentially switched to defense in this direction, their tactics didn't really change. Do I understand that correctly, or what?
Yes, indeed, it hasn't changed much because right now the use of any armored vehicles or large groups, for example, starting from a squad and up, is easily detected and it's easier to inflict fire damage on them. And when a small assault group is moving, well, you can call it different things. That is, they are heading to the defense area, they are going on an assault, moving in groups of 1, 2, or at most 3 soldiers so that it is as difficult as possible to detect them. Because right now we all understand that there is a lot of greenery and it is harder to detect them in the tree lines. But thanks to the professionalism of our UAV operators and our aerial reconnaissance, we detect them even in the tree lines. And as you can see from this footage, they are being destroyed by FPV means even in the tree lines. Our guys fly into the dense tree lines and destroy them there.
You already mentioned drones, specifically fiber optic drones you were talking about. How significant of a role did unmanned drones actually play in this specific operation to liberate the territories in this sector? I'm curious to understand the full extent of their impact.
Well, let's put it this way. Unmanned aerial vehicles in general are currently playing one of the key roles in the war. I mean, if we're talking about key roles right now, actual infantry firefights, where it's, say, a paratrooper against some Russian soldier, are very, very rare. But the actual detection of targets and the engagement of targets are primarily ensured by 2 components. The first is UAV assets. The second is artillery. So reconnaissance has to detect the target, we identify the targets, and only then is it decided whether UAV assets will engage this target or if artillery will engage it. What is the difference between these 2 means? For an unmanned aerial vehicle to fly there from the moment a target is detected, some time passes. Artillery assets need much less time for this to aim and deliver fire damage. That is the difference. So yes, it is less precise, but it is faster. And UAV assets are one of the key roles in general, not just in offense, not just in defense, but in the war entirely.